Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the big ideas for section 6.3. And in this lesson we were looking at adding and subtracting random variables. So there are some rules that go along with adding and subtracting random variables that we have to know. The first rule is this: if we have two variables, x and y, so we've got x and y, and we want to combine them together, we want to add them together. So we're going to add x and y together. We want to find the mean of the sum or the addition of those two variables. Well, it's really pretty simple. You take the mean of x and you add it to the mean of y. So that's pretty easy. That's what it comes down to. Now, what if we were talking about subtraction? Well, with subtraction, it's the same idea. If we have two variables, x and y, and we are subtracting those two variables from each other, then the mean of the difference would be the difference of the means. So the mean of x minus y is equal to the mean of x minus the mean of y. So that's pretty intuitive and that's pretty easy to understand when we're talking about the mean. But what about standard deviation? Things change a little bit with standard deviation. What we really need to do with standard deviation is this. If we have two variables, x and y, and we want to add the two together, how do we find this new standard deviation? Well, what we have to do is change them both into variance. So we take the standard deviation of x and square it to get the variance of x. We take the standard deviation of y and square it to get the variance of y, and then we add the variances together. So once we add the variances together, then we take the square root, which takes us back to standard deviation. So find the variance, add the two variances together, then take the square root to get back to standard deviation. That's how you find standard deviation when you're adding two variables together. Well, what if we are subtracting two variables from each other? Just like we did a second ago, we looked at the mean of x plus y. Then we looked at the mean of x minus y. Now we're looking at the standard deviation of x plus y. Now let's look at the standard deviation of x minus y. Well, in this case, you might think, oh, x minus y, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did over here, except I'm going to subtract. But you would not be correct. In this case, we still are going to add the two variances together. So even though I'm subtracting the two variables from each other, we still are going to find the variance, find the variance, add the two variances together, and then take the square root. So even though we're subtracting x minus y to find the standard deviation of x minus y, we find it the same way we would if we were adding the two variables together. The variance of x plus the variance of y, and then take the square root to get back into standard deviation form. So hopefully this helps. These are pretty simple formulas. You just have to remember them. And the big thing is remembering that change these into variance before you add. And even though you may be subtracting, you still change these into variances before you add the two together and then take the square root. Hopefully this helps, and hopefully you have a great day.